He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell Team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Storypower TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
I believe it was Harriet Beecher Stowe who wrote a book that caused a president to change his heart and his mind. In fact, when he first met her, and look this up, send me a message if I'm wrong, but I believe when Abraham Lincoln met Harriet Beecher Stowe, he said something along the lines of, "You're the little woman who wrote the big book." And that big book changed his heart, changed his mind on slavery, and changed his position of faith. Abraham Lincoln, as one of the most transformational presidents in the history of the United States of America, was impacted by a storyteller. That's what I want to talk about today on Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and I've been telling stories for as long as I can remember. Some of them great stories, some of them completely made up, some of them to get myself out of trouble, some of them, sadly enough, to get myself into trouble. Yeah, my mom tells stories all the time about how I, as a kid, would actually tell stories. I would lie, knowing that the lie was actually going to get me into trouble. Make sense out of that. Yeah, I can't. But I can tell you that stories have changed the minds of people all over the world. Stories have changed the hearts of people all over the world. And if John Maxwell is right that leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less, there is no greater way to influence people than through stories. Which then the logical conclusion would be there's no greater tool for leadership than storytelling. And here begins the real challenge. Because there are a lot of people who tell stories that are purely fabricated. They may be grandly theatrical. They may be incredibly dramatic. They may express a great trauma and maybe even ignite some hope, point in a direction. But when those stories are fabricated, when they're truly fiction, but they're not in the form of an allegory, they're not made for a purpose or an illustration. They're made to manipulate. Those stories, like completely fictional books, but burying a narrative. Those news stories, we've seen them. The news stories. They make the headline news of all the major printed publications and all the major broadcast television and radio and internet. And we read these headlines and then we read the details of the story. And in some instances, what's in the headline and what's in the story, they don't even have a relationship to each other. The headline was just a clickbait to get you to open the article or pick up the newspaper, buy it off the newsstand. Read all about it. And then you start reading about it and you're like, but that if that's the details of the story, that story doesn't even match the headline. But then sometimes we actually find out that the story itself was entirely fabricated. What they told us happened. The players that they told us were involved. The incident itself, sold as news, truly fiction. Storytelling is a powerful tool for leadership. probably one of the most powerful. The thing we've got to be cautious about as leaders and as consumers, those being led, is the narrative. How often do the stories that we hear actually line up with each other more than they line up with reality? They line up with each other more than they line up with the truth. They line up with each other as an agenda, but not in the reality that we all live in, just the future someone wants to create. See, I'm afraid there's a whole lot of storytelling out there that leads people in a bad direction. Nefarious storytelling, if you will. It's not just fiction. It's not just made up. It's not just that the headline doesn't match the core of the story, but the headline doesn't match the core of the story, and the core of the story doesn't match reality, and reality as we know it is being changed and manipulated by the story, but it's the headline that sucks us into the story for the purpose of changing our reality. Now, you know as well as I do that if I were to ask you to write down 10 times in the course of your life that you read a story that you later realized was untrue, and you were kind of frustrated with the fact that the story made the news and it got all the play that it did and everybody heard it, but then you were infuriated when you realized there was something behind that story that had nothing to do with the story, the players, or the characters involved. It was a direction they wanted you to look to avoid a lie that was going to be exposed. Or it was a direction they wanted you to look because they want to recraft your future. And when I say they, I mean anyone who's telling stories that are not true and authentic and uplifting. Anyone who's telling stories that have another agenda besides the story they're telling. I don't care if they're telling stories to sell you something, or they're telling stories to change your reality, or they're telling stories to build a relationship. If those stories are told with truth and authenticity and originality and authority, they can be powerful, life-changing stories. 12 years ago when I really started digging, I guess it's been almost 13 years ago, when I really started digging into this world of public speaking and leadership development. I had been in leadership, I've been in the Air Force, I've been in the military, I've led retail organizations at 2 or 3 different retail organizations at a time. I understood a lot about people, but I didn't understand how manipulative the story could be. And then I started really researching stories and watching great communicators and great storytellers and people who can speak with their eyes as much as they can say with their words. People like one of the people we discussed last night can sit in a room of 35,000 people and talk in such a way that every one of the 35,000 people feels like it's just that speaker and themselves having a cup of coffee. And then there are those who can mesmerize crowds of hundreds of thousands like a Billy Graham, and with no script at all can rapture the attention of large audiences with or without media support, with or without cameras around. And then there are those who can tell a story like Grandpa on the porch with the rocking chair and a whittling knife, and 5 hours later all the grandkids are still sitting there staring up at him in amazement. Tell us another one, Grandpa. There's a country song called You Should Have Seen It in Color. And the whole song is about the stories Grandpa would tell about the mistakes that he and his brothers made from the time they were growing up until they went off to war. And as he told the story, he remembered it kind of like he grew up watching television in black and white. And then he would say to them, you should have seen it in color. Meaning, you should have been there. If you experienced firsthand what I've experienced firsthand, you would see this world differently. That's what he was saying. But the fact that they sat in combined attention like no video game had ever seen and listened to the stories of this old guy because they had an endearing relationship to him, because he told a good story, because the stories he told were something they'd never heard before. He had their ear. He had influence. He was a leader. See, every day we have the opportunity with our kids, with our neighbors' kids, with the people that we work around with the people that we meet at the coffee shop or stand around the water cooler with. To challenge, to change, to awaken their perspective of reality. And we have the ability to do that through storytelling. My mission on this earth as a leader is what I call StoryPower. I've committed this year to make every effort to do a StoryPower Masterclass once every month. For the month of June, that entire class has been bought out. And by that I mean one client said, I'm buying every chair in the class, and I want you not to do it in your normal classroom, but to come to ours and teach it for our company. And so over the next 2 days, I will not be here doing Leading Leaders podcast because I will be there teaching a 2-day StoryPower Masterclass, first time ever. But we've got a big hurdle to accomplish and a big presentation that they'll be doing in September. So I want that team to be ready. In July, though, right here in Granbury, Texas, we're actually going to do a free lunch and learn sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce and Porter Title. If you would like information on that, shoot me an email or a message. You can send it to Loren, Loren, at jlorennorris.com. Just send a message and say, I will come to Granbury, Texas to be a part of that event. We've got room for about 50 people in the classroom. It will be about a 3-hour class, but lunch is included, and what I'm teaching that day is free. And you'll see a whole lot of demonstration and a whole lot of practical teaching. You will walk away with a skill set that you don't currently have, or at least some polish on a skill set that you already have. And you'll have an invitation to be a part of the StoryPower Masterclass, whether it's online or it's live and in person. But just like Grandpa in his rocking chair, or Harriet Beecher Stowe when she stood in front of the president, or Frederick Douglass, who was also a masterful storyteller, when he stood in front of the president. And he said, there are things you just don't know that you gotta know. Storytellers have the power to change the world. Storytellers are leaders who have off the charts influence. And everyone from John Maxwell to Grant Cardone will tell you the most important thing, Warren Buffett has said the same, the most important thing you can have in your portfolio is not a stock. It's not an investment. It's not even real estate. It's strong communication skills. When Grant Cardone's homeschool teacher for his children was asked, what is the thing you want me to focus on? Is it finances? Is it the STEM content? What do you want me to focus on with your kids? And he said, I will fire you if they're not better communicators 1 year from now. Because in his estimation, the most important thing you can learn to be is a better communicator. John Maxwell says, in the law of the lid, your organization will never rise above the level that you have achieved. And if the biggest lid, the biggest cap, the biggest stopping point for your leadership growth is the lid of your communication skills, your entire organization will stop right there. I challenge you as a leader to become a better storyteller. Now think about the stories that you're telling. Are they fiction? Are they real? Are they made up? Are they authentic? Do you have the right to tell them? These are all questions that we ask and address in the StoryPower Masterclass. Again, it doesn't matter if you do it online or if you do it in person, just do it. Find out what the power is of an authentic story. Learn how to mine the stories that you've already lived through in your life to find the ones that have the most power, to draw out your greatest identity, to bring your best self forward, and to put you in front of the world in a way that what you have to say can truly change the world around you. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people who do a similar thing to what I do. I would love for you to be a part of the StoryPower Masterclass. I don't care who you learn from. Just learn it. Now, I can tell you, my mentor, John Maxwell, says, who you learn from is as important as what you learn. There are a lot of people teaching storytelling. There are a lot of people teaching story brand. There are a lot of people teaching you how to speak from the stage. Lots of people, lots and lots of people. And all of them will tell you that your story is important. But I don't know of any yet who dive into the psychology of story to the same level that I do. I've studied under a majority of them. And so far, I haven't found anybody who digs into it deeper than I do. They may be out there. I just haven't discovered them yet. But if you're going to lead in this tumultuous time that we live in, as our world is facing unbelievable, cataclysmic shifts in mindset, in paradigms, in ideologies, in conversations, the things being said over the water cooler, the things being said in the child's lunchroom, the things being said in the children's classroom, on the playground, on the street corner, in their social media, in the background of their video games, those, my friends, are storytellers. And there's a strong probability that if you could hear all of the conversations going on in the background of Minecraft, you would be absolutely appalled. Absolutely appalled, devastated, heartbroken to think that's the kind of conversation my 5, 6, 7-year-old is being exposed to? Are you kidding me? Can we not do any better than that? Trust me, there are people in those games posing as peers to your 6, 7, 8-year-old child, to your middle school daughters and sons who have nefarious means, nefarious intent. They have designs to do harm. And they will do that harm through conversation and through storytelling. And if that's the way they choose to influence your child, they will lead your child down a path you may not be able to recover them from. Learn to tell stories. Learn to identify stories. Learn to identify the narrative behind the story, to pick out when the headline doesn't match the content of the story, nor does it match reality. As a leader, you're responsible for that. For yourself, for your family, for your organization, for our society, for our cultural legacies around the world. Get busy. I encourage you to check out StoryPower Masterclass. You can go to StoryPowerMasterClass.com right now and find it. And just see how I do what I do. And if it would challenge you to be better you, dive in. And if not, find somebody who can teach you to be a better storyteller, because you cannot lead without strong communication. And the greatest form of communication is storytelling. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, or Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.